Hi all, my name is Manish Sehgal. I'm an information security professional with an experience of more than 21 years in the domain. During this tenure, I worked in various sectors such as BFSI, manufacturing, telecom, ITES, and various roles starting from network security engineer to chief information security officer. Today, I'm here to present on topic secure your network with possible defensive mechanisms. So let's begin. All of us have heard the term network security. So what exactly we mean by it? Network security is a set of activities focused to ensure that the data and the network of an organization remains usable without compromising its integrity and confidentiality. It starts from designing policies, procedures, guidelines to actual implementation of technical controls so as to prevent and monitor unauthorized access, misuse, modification, or denial of a computer network involves principles of authentication, authorization, and accountability for every asset hosted on a data network. Which brings us to the obvious question. Do all of the organizations need network security? Well, the answers are simple. You need network security to ensure business continuity. For organizations which are completely based on online presence, network security becomes the most important business objective. Even a small cyber attack can disrupt their day-to-day operations, risking everything from financial losses, loss of intellectual property, customer confidence, to a complete digital shutdown. For such organizations, it's imperative that they take extreme measures to ensure that their data is always up and running. To prevent data loss, as stated by mathematician Clive Humby in 2006, data is the new oil. Everything revolves around data, whether it is your customer details, your financial information, your business objectives, or your PII, which is personally identifiable information. Everything is data. For few organizations, data is their lifeline, such as banks. Any loss of data by a bank would cause them to close their business operations. To avoid fines, majority of the countries across the globe have taken data security seriously and imposed hefty fines to those who do not abide by their guidelines. One regulation which was recently enforced to ensure that organizations provide due importance to data of their customers was General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. Violators of GDPR may be fined up to 20 million euros, or up to 4% of the annual worldwide turnover of the preceding financial year, whichever is greater. Last but not the least, to maintain the goodwill. Customers can be internal or external. They would only like to work with the business if they are relatively sure that the data which they are providing to an organization would remain secure. All organizations across the globe need to ensure that they take due diligence in keeping the information of their customers secure. Customers' goodwill is the only thing which will keep them in business. The organizations do you need to apply network security? Well, we need to apply the network security principles on the endpoints. Endpoints are the weakest link in an organization, and most of the attacks which are successful usually start with a compromised endpoint. To ensure that the endpoints are not compromised, we need to define specific policies and procedures which could provide the required endpoint security. Endpoint security or endpoint protection is a term used to define the techniques and technologies put in place to ensure how we secure the corporate network of an organization while it is being accessed by the remote devices such as desktop, laptops, and other mobile devices. Infrastructure security or network infrastructure security provides the basis for endpoints to communicate over the corporate network. It includes networking hardware, software, and services. If the network infrastructure of an organization is not secure, any data which is residing on it will be lost. It includes designing policies, running audits, conducting awareness trainings, applying principles of need to know, timely patching, and reviewing the deployed technical controls on an ongoing basis. Application security. All organizations which have data networks need applications for their internal and external customers to use and work upon. Application security is the collection of techniques put in place which ensure that all the applications which an organization is hosting are relatively free of security vulnerabilities. It is a process of running tests on an application against the known vulnerabilities and fixing them. The most common standard which is used for application security testing is OWASP Top 10. What are those principles of network security which we need to apply? Well, the pillars of network security are confidentiality. The first principle of data security is confidentiality. This involves ensuring that only the authorized set of people have access to a specific set of data. For example, you would not like someone from payroll department to have access to your personal emails. In the same way, you would not want anyone in your organization to have access to your payroll information. There are specific controls which are put in place to ensure that the data remains confidential, such as data classification, strong access controls, encryption of data, and adequate awareness among the set of people who have access to specific data. The second principle of data security is about ensuring that the data does not get tampered with and is reliable in its entire life cycle. An example could be banking information of a customer and their financial data. The controls which help to ensure data integrity are encryption, hashing, auditing, version control, and strong authentication techniques. To ensure availability, or the third principle of data security is about that the data should be available to authorized access at the time when it's needed. Availability is all about ensuring that the network and applications are always up and running. The controls which help to ensure principle of availability are deploying principles of high availability in IT infrastructure, fault-tolerant machines, backups, testing, BCP, and DR infrastructure, and regular patching and software updates. Till now, we have talked about the network security part. Let's now talk about how an attacker performs attack on an organization. An adversary will usually take months to plan an attack before finally executing it. The period could range from months to years, as well as in case of nation-funded attacks. The first stage in an attack is information gathering. During the first stage of attack, an adversary will research, identify, and select their target organizations. They conduct reconnaissance attacks, wherein they gather information about the target from the publicly available information and about their employees from social networking websites. They also conduct scans to identify systems which can be exploited. The objective is to find out the weakness of an organization. Common methods to prevent against such attacks are to monitor your network and provide awareness trainings to your employees. The second stage the adversary would now try to find out how to deliver the malicious payload within the organization. The techniques used are spear phishing, automated tools, armed attachments, and malicious advertising. Common methods to prevent against such attacks are to ensure visibility into the encrypted traffic, URL filtering, DNS protection, awareness training to employees, and so on. The third stage is the exploitation, in which the adversary would deploy an exploit on a vulnerable system. The objective is to get a foothold in the organization. Techniques used are weaponized attachments and exploit kits. Common methods to prevent against such attacks are to block known and unknown threats in the endpoints and always keep the systems updated with the current definitions. In the fourth stage, the adversary would try to do lateral movement, wherein he would install additional malware in the systems with the goal to have access, persistently avoid detection, and escalate the privileges available for their account. Common methods to prevent against such attacks are to apply application whitelisting solutions, limited privileged access, and awareness training to employees. In the fifth stage, the adversary would try and take the command of the infected system from their malicious infrastructure. The goal is to establish a communication channel which could be used for further malicious purposes. Common methods to prevent against such attack is to block and monitor suspicious outbound traffic, deploy sinkholes, URL filtering, DNS security, and application whitelisting solutions. In the last stage, the adversary will carry out the intended action. It could be data exfiltration, data destruction, or disruption of services or extortion. Common methods to prevent against such attacks are to block IOCs, deploy anti-APT devices, URL filtering, DNS security, monitor and block all inbound and outbound suspicious traffic, and conduct threat hunting exercises. The attacks can further be divided into two types: passive and active. A passive attack is the one in which an attacker observes the traffic, does not modify or change the data, and the data owner does not even know about it. Here, the attack is on the confidentiality of the information. The most common type of passive attack is traffic analysis. In active attacks, the adversary observes the traffic and manipulates it as well. Here, the attack is on integrity and availability of data. The most common type of active attack is the session injection attack. So what are the types of passive attacks? The first type of passive attack is traffic monitoring. Here, the adversary monitors the communication between the sending and the receiving machines. The next is traffic analysis. The adversary analyzes the monitored traffic and tries to find out the loopholes, which helps him to plan his next step of attacks. Third, eavesdropping. The adversary listens to the communication without letting the sender and the receiver know about the same. The most common method to avoid passive attacks is to use encryption for every communication. What are the type of active attacks? The first type of active attacks is worms, rats, or Trojans. Worms are malicious software that can modify, delete, or even inject new malware in a system. Rats or remote access Trojans are the software which allow hackers to gain administrative control of the target machine. Trojans are malicious software which are disguised as legitimate software and are deployed by adversaries to damage, steal, or inflict some harm to the target machine. The most common method to prevent worms, rats, or Trojans is by patching the systems regularly and keeping the anti-malware files updated. DOS and DDoS. Well, denial of service or DOS is an attack in which the adversary tries to make a network resource unusable by disrupting the services of that resource. It's usually performed by utilizing all the available resources of a network resource. DDoS or distributed denial of service is an attack in which the traffic is sent from many sources towards a single network resource to disrupt the services given by the said resource. The most common method to prevent DOS and DDoS is to use monitoring and classifying traffic, detecting the attack patterns, and deploying response tools such as ITES-based prevention, block hole, and sinkhole techniques. XSS or cross-site scripting is an attack in which the adversary tries to inject malicious scripts into the web pages. The most common method to prevent XSS is to test an application and to ensure the code does not allow such actions. IP and DNS spoofing is an attack in which IP spoofing is an attack in which the adversary modifies the sender address of an IP packet to make the receiver think that it's originated from a trusted source. In the DNS spoofing, the adversary alters the DNS record of a legitimate site so that the traffic can be redirected towards a malicious site. The most common method to prevent against IP spoofing is to authenticate and encrypt the network traffic. And the most common method to prevent against DNS attacks is to keep the DNS servers updated. Phishing and spear phishing. An email-based attack in which the adversary tries to infect the endpoint by sending a malicious attachment or link, hoping that the novice user will click or download the same is called phishing. A phishing email is sent to bulk users, hoping that they would catch the bait. In spear phishing, targeted emails are sent to few employees of a specific organization, which appear to be coming from some trusted user. The most common method to prevent against phishing and spear phishing attacks is by using spam filters, secure email gateways, and awareness sessions for employees. Drive-by downloads, an attack in which an adversary tries to infect an endpoint just by browsing a website. It uses small pieces of malicious code which are designed to bypass the system controls. The most common method to prevent against drive-by downloads is to keep the system and the browser updated. What are the common techniques which help us against these common cyber attacks? Firewall. A firewall is a network security device that monitors incoming and outgoing network traffic and decides whether to allow or block specific traffic based on specific set of rules. An IPS. An IPS is used to identify malicious activity, record detected threats, report detected threats, and take preventative actions to stop a threat from doing damage. Deception technology. Deception technology is a cybersecurity defense practice that aims to deceive attackers by distributing a collection of traps and decoys across a system's infrastructure to imitate genuine assets. Anti-APT. An anti-APT is a device which is used to detect the APT, which are stealthy, malicious software, usually nation-state or state-sponsored group funded, which try to gain unauthorized access to a computer network and remain undetected for an extended period. UBA. UBA is a set of algorithms, or user behavior analysis is a set of algorithms that analyzes user activity to spot abnormal behavior, raise an alert, and stop such access. It's commonly used in fraud risk management tools. Sandboxing. Sandboxing is a technique which you create in which you create an isolated test environment, a sandbox in which to execute or detonate a suspicious file or URL that is attached to an email or otherwise reaches your network and then observes its. How would you defend your data center? The first and the foremost pillar of data center is the entity. It's the resource which you want to protect. Second is the platform, the underlying infrastructure which would be holding the data which you want to protect. And third is the actual data which you would like to protect within your data center. So what are the common reasons why today's networks are susceptible? And anti-malware softwares are signature-based. They need to be updated on a regular basis. And if it is not updated, it would not be able to protect against the recent threats. Users use dictionary words as their passwords and become easy prey to brute force attacks. The best way to protect against yourself against password-based attacks is to use passphrases instead of passwords. Critical and important data needs to be regularly backed up so that it can be used when the need arises. Patching is an activity which most organizations do not take seriously and are compromised because of not updating system and network resources on time. As per cybersecurity, humans are the weakest link, and through regular reinforced education, only we can protect organizations against advanced attacks. So how do you build the network security team of the future? Planning helps you to understand where your organization is and what it needs to do to reach their final network security goal. With the help of learning and increasing one's knowledge, can only one deploy new technologies and thus provide optimum network security for their organization. When an organization wants to deploy upcoming or new technologies, they need to ensure that the workforce they have can also support that technology, and hence it becomes utmost important to upskill their current workforce. All organizations need to provide specialized training programs for employees involved in the network security domain. By using the knowledge acquired through these training programs only, the employees will be able to defend against the upcoming and advanced threats. So that brings us to the end of our session. If you have any questions related to the topic,